Okay, so in this session, I'm going to look at temporal aggregate supply shock and situation whereby the central bank decides not to respond to it. So I will draw my curve, long run, aggregate supply, aggregate demand, 0.0, short run, aggregate supply 4.0. So this becomes Y0 potential, and it becomes your inflation 0, right? Now, if there is a negative temporal aggregate supply shock, then that means the short run aggregate supply will shift rightward here. So let me use a different ink. So it will shift from here, let's say short run aggregate supply 1, right, at this point. So at a new inflation, level 1, and I will come to this point, Y, right? Okay. So now, because there is what a negative a temporal aggregate supply shock, it shifts the supply curve what leftward, that is upwards, from SRS0 to SRS1 at a new equilibrium level of Y1 in inflation period 1, right? Now, so if the central bank does not decide to respond to this, then what it means is that in the long run, yeah, so if the central bank decides not to respond to this, then what it means is that in the long run, economic agents will know that in order for this, because we always have to attain this point in the long run, right? Because the economy cannot stay here. Now, in order for us to get back to this permanent Y0 potential, then economic agents will anticipate that, okay, then in the future, for this one to happen, then prices will have to fall, right? In order for our output to fall from here, because outputs are reduced up to this point. It's okay, and inflation has gone up here. The community agents will know that in order for output to fall back up to this point, then what it means is that what prices would have to fall. So they will have lower expected this. Now, once they have lower expectation of prices, then they will cause the aggregate supply to shift inwards again. Because once this one goes down, it means the aggregate supply will have to shift. So the aggregate supply will shift. Previously, it shifted from here up to here, right? Now, because economic agents now have lower expected inflation, then this will cause it back, the supply curve to shift again back until it gets to its previous state, which is this point, until it gets to this point where we achieve this Y0. I hope it's okay. A quick summary. So first of all, what we are saying is that there is a negative aggregate supply curve. And this negative aggregate supply curve is causing the short-run aggregate supply to shift because the effect is temporal. So the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift upwards because of the negative temporal aggregate supply shock. It shifts upwards. So it shifts upwards at a new equilibrium level of what? Inflation period 1 and output 1. It's okay. So we are here. Great. Now what we are saying is that at this point, the output is below the potential level that we expect to have in the long run, and inflation has increased, right? Now, the economic agents will know that because we would like to be in the at this point in the long run, then in order for at this point in the long run, then in order for this to happen, prices would have to fall, so that in order for output to increase. So what it means that economic agents will form a lower expectation of inflation or prices. Now, once they form lower expectation of inflation or prices, what it means is that it is going to shift our aggregate supply curve downwards. Don't forget, this is also part of what the aggregate supply equation. We said aggregate supply. We said inflation is equal to what? Expected inflation plus lambda output minus output potential plus price shock, right? So once they form lower expectation for this one, it will cause the aggregate supply curve, right, to shift back again. So the aggregate supply curve is going to shift back, and it will shift until it gets to the previous state. That is where this output will be achieved. I hope it's okay now. Okay, so let's look at the second scenario. And in this scenario, we are looking at the situation whereby there is a temporary aggregate supply shock, and the central bank decide to stabilize output in the short run. So let me draw my curve again. This is my long run aggregate supply curve. This is my aggregate demand curve, and this is my short run aggregate supply curve at period 0. So this becomes my Y potential, and this becomes my inflation level. Now, because there is what negative temporary aggregate supply shock, it shifts the short run aggregate supply out leftward up to this point. So short run aggregate supply, let me call this point 1. So it establishes a new level here, right? New level here, and we have new inflation 1 here. So then output 1 also here. Great. So I'll call this one output 1. Great. Now look at something. Output has fallen below to the potential level, right? Now, so because in the short run, the central bank would want to stabilize inflation, stabilize output. That is, central bank want output to fall, increase back to this level, right? So what the central bank can do is to use the monetary policy. Now, the central bank is going to use monetary policy to increase output to the previous state. Then what they have to introduce is easing monetary policy. Easing monetary policy, that would mean central bank would have to reduce R. Now, once the central bank reduces R, what happens? It will cause R to increase, investment to what? So it causes R to what? Decrease, investment to increase, and then output to what? Increase. Now, once output increase means the AD also shifts upwards. The AD will shift upwards. So the AD will shift until it gets to the point whereby the new short-run aggregate supply and the long-run aggregate supply is meeting. That is this point. So it will shift until it gets to this point. So this can be new AD, right? Great. So we are here at new. So let me call it A2 so that the label can follow A2, right? So what it means is that if in that case, the economy will also fall back. It will fall, it will increase to the potential level. So what it means is that if the central bank decides, anytime there's a temporary shock and the central bank decides to stabilize output, that means it will have to achieve this with the cost. And the cost is what? The increase in inflation. Because the inflation was here, and because the central bank decided to stabilize output, the increasing has increased further up to this point. So that is the cost. If the central bank decides to stabilize output, it could increase inflation. So let's look at scenario 3. Okay, so in the third scenario, we are looking at the situation whereby there is a temporary aggregate supply shock and the central bank wants to stabilize inflation. So let's draw our curve again. This is our long run aggregate supply. We have our AD at 0.0. We have our short run aggregate supply at 0.0. And we have our price level here. We have Y0 potential, and we have inflation at 0.0. So if there is a negative temporary aggregate supply shock, that will shift the short run aggregate supply curve leftwards. So we'll shift it up to this point. So I'll call this one short run aggregate supply curve 0.1, right? And at this point, it comes with what? This inflation level. So let's say the central bank has targeted this inflation, and it does not want it to increase in the short run. But meanwhile, because there is a short run aggregate supply, there is a negative aggregate supply shock, it has caused it to increase from year to year. So what the central bank has to do is to use monetary policy to bring this inflation back to 0.0, right? So the central bank can only, and it is only when you buy more that inflation go up. So what the central bank can do is to use tighten monetary policy. Tighten monetary policy in the sense that central bank should increase the autonomous R, right? So when the central bank increases autonomous R, so we have Y here, 1 here. Once the central bank introduce autonomous R, what happens to investment? It increases. Once investment increases, output will fall and the AD will shift downwards, right? So the AD is going to shift from here. It will shift. So the AD will shift, let's say from here. So the AD will shift downwards because there is what tightening money policy. So it will shift until the new AD meets with the new aggregate supply. So this is the new AD 1. So it will shift until it comes up to this point. All right, so I'll call this, let's say, so let me call this 2. And let's say this 2. So it will shift until it meets this point. Right, it's okay. So what it means is that if the central bank also decides to stabilize inflation, it comes with what? A cost, and the cost is that it is going to reduce your output further because the output would have been decreased up to only this point. But because the central bank to decide to stabilize inflation, it has caused output to reduce further up to this level. So the cost with this is that if you want to stabilize inflation, you account to the cost of reducing your output. And if you want to stabilize output, it comes to the cost of what? Increasing inflation. Thank you.